Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We have special guests Sumana Jetty and Alipio De Vera, and we are here to talk about the startup space and biases that we may face and how to overcome those. Both Sumana and Alipio are in the startup space. So let's start with you, Sumana, so that you can give an introduction of what you do. Then we'll pass it to Alipio and he can give his introduction.
I love it. I mean, I'm fairly new to the startup space. It's only been a year. Hello, everyone. My name is Sumana Jetty. I am the owner and CEO of a company called Jetty Wellness. And what we provide is evidence based work-based wellness strategies for high performing organizations and to millennials, of course, in that organization. So a lot of just research and science, taking those strategies from research and then just training the individuals and the organizations to have a better culture of wellness and learn not just what wellness means from the basic fundamentals of it, but like really apply that and use research as our foundation. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really excited to have you. And Alipio, would you like to introduce yourself and give your introduction?
Yes, hi. Name's Alipio De Vera. Primarily, my background is 29 years in software development. I did have one startup in which we created a software prototype for ADT security systems for the Boeing Aerospace Company, and it was written up by Microsoft as an example of innovation technologies back in the 90s. I also have started a startup corporation, which I shut down because of my inexperience in hiring like minded executives. So that was an interesting lesson to have. And currently, I'm doing research primarily in fasting and also doing competitive research right now and looking into specific technologies to develop an app. So that's me.
Very cool. Very cool. Thank you, Alipio. I think when we first think of startup, we think innovation and new ideas and breaking down the doors that are closed on so many people. But actually, when you get into the startup space, you find there are barriers, and some of those barriers you may not be aware of. Sumana, could you kind of walk us through what the last year's been like, and maybe some of those barriers that you discovered that you weren't prepared for?
Yeah, I mean, just before the live went on, we were talking about roller coasters. I think that's like the most accurate analogy of what the last year has been like. It's just like, let's go. I don't know when the next hype's going to be. I don't know when the next drop is going to be. Like
Mm.
every day is a new day. And I think that's one of the things that if anybody's watching, if you're a new startup, a new entrepreneur, kind of keep that in mind because every day is a new day. How wonderful is that? You never know if you're going to wake up to something beautiful and magical that day and land a big contract, or if you're going to wake up and it's not going to be all that exciting, and that's okay too. So the year's been kind of like that. I mean, I started off kind of thinking more in the space of like maybe I do need to develop an app that I'm not gonna lie to you. That was something that I did think about. Maybe we needed a solution that was more technologically advanced, but then what I realized is that, well, this isn't the passion, this isn't the mission, and this isn't the business model that I'm looking for. The business model depends on community, and the community that I'm looking to develop, I don't need to invest thousands of dollars to do that. I can do it on LinkedIn. I can do that on Clubhouse. I can do that on TikTok. I can do that on Instagram. So the
Mhm.
business model definitely changed. And in terms of barriers, definitely like identifying that you're not going to have a lot of money. Your money, you need to really be careful. When I decided to quit my job, I had to think almost a year ahead. A year from now, am I going to be able to sustain myself? So that decision was very dependent on not just me as a single individual, but also having that buffer, that financial buffer, that if something were to go wrong, am I going to be able to sustain? Keep that in your first sort of like idea, is you need to have your financial buffers in place, because I know a lot of startups run out of money and then there's nothing left. There was also barriers to learning. There was a lot of barriers to learning. Well, I didn't know what to learn. There's so many options. Do I go here? Do I go there? Do I
Mhm.
invest my time on TikTok? Do I invest my time on LinkedIn? Is Clubhouse the right avenue? And Tia, you know this. I mean, we spend hours on Clubhouse. Oh my goodness, so many
Mhm.
hours in Clubhouse trying to like develop a community. and then having to quickly pivot and learn that, okay, maybe this isn't the right platform for me. So don't get too clingy, you guys. There's no such thing as being clinging in the business world. You have to be like rolling with the punches, and you have to be super adaptable. So I'll probably stop there, and maybe we'll hear from you or Alipio.
Yeah, Alivio, you've seen kind of a change in how startups are working, right, from the 90s to now. And what are some of the main changes that you're seeing? And are they good?
Well, it's the type of thing where some things stay the same and some things have definitely changed. Primarily in what some things change the same is despite what you hear about, the world has all these little innovation centers popping up, everybody still comes to the two main areas where the financing is easier: Silicon Valley and New York. A perfect example, Taya knows we have a common friend in Susie Bianco, who runs a national review board for young entrepreneurs to see which ideas are the best. Well, the Nordic companies have, from cultural standpoint, these barriers to new entrepreneurs. So the Nordic companies have banded together and actually established a consortium in Silicon Valley where young Nordic startups come in to get the money. As Sumana says, it's all about getting the money. However, it's also the fact, and I just know this from when I lived 4 years in Seattle, that you have to be where the action is. I still remember listening to a story from I forgot, she was a candidate for governor several years ago. She was an executive with eBay, but she talked about how she met an opportunity to become an executive at eBay standing in a Starbucks in Silicon Valley. Again, you have to be where everybody is because you never know who you're going to meet. I know from hanging out in Seattle, I rubbed a lot of shoulders with fellow Microsofties. Back in the 90s, Microsoft was like the sun for the startup universe besides Silicon Valley. It's the reason I came to Seattle, because I knew there would be opportunities, and I was changing from corporate IT to software engineering with only a history degree and then 8.5 years of corporate IT, which to software engineering people is worthless. So by going to Seattle, I found this opportunity to get that Microsoft case study. That's how I broke in the industry. But again, that could not have happened unless I went to the center of the universe back in the 90s, which was Microsoft, because it was attracting all this talent and all these people that want to develop startups and work with Microsoft. So yes, you have to have finance, but you also have to have the right personnel, and you have to have the right network. At least from my perspective, you need a confluence of factors that can increase your chance of success to become a startup, because it's very competitive. And you never know who your true competition can be, right? Whoever thought that, in the taxi cab industry, Uber would come from nowhere. So that's another thing why you need to be in the area where you can learn from people in different industries, because you can go, wow, I didn't think about that. And that's a competitive threat. So,
Yeah.
and I'll get off my soapbox.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of missed opportunities that we've definitely seen throughout the recent years, especially in journalism, for example. Now they're kind of scrambling. How do we get people to pay? How do we keep up with, this market that is now free to most people, right? We take it for granted that we can access any news story for free online. So it is interesting to see how companies have tried to come back from that and mostly failed, I think. I don't know. I don't see a lot of positive, innovation coming out of that space. But Sumana, when you look at all of the competition, like Alipio said, is it overwhelming? How do you set yourself apart, and how do you come up with a strategy, I guess, to set yourself apart?
Yeah, that's a real, like, I love that question. And I try not to think about the competition too much, because I know who the top tier players are. I almost think of them as like, this is who I aspire to be versus like I'm competing with them. Right. So I don't even think about it. I'm like, I know what sets me apart is the fact that I do have that science and research. I mean, 10 years in public health and healthcare, it's not something to just flush it down the toilet and say it doesn't matter. And to be honest, maybe the first 6 months or so when I was maneuvering and figuring things out and like moving into and pivoting my career, I did think that, oh my goodness, 10 years of my life, I wasted 10 years of my life being in public health and healthcare. But guess what? No, that became the superpower that I needed to be the differentiator, because not a lot of people, there's a lot of people here, on LinkedIn, on TikTok, that are giving lots of value on wellness and burnout. But then I immediately identify someone like Jennifer Moss, who brings the evidence and research and says, let's talk, let's have a real talk. So I think I don't really worry too much. I don't actually spend that much time even thinking about competitors. I just know, I kind of look at them to see, okay, they have a pretty solid understanding of the subject matter, and this is how they're implementing. Do I want to be an author and write a book one day? I don't know. Maybe. Do I have a story to tell? Absolutely. But do I want to make TikToks right now? Absolutely.
Yes, it's so true that thinking about your competitors does kind of paralyze you, right? You need to think about what your offer is, your unique offer. But I think something else that Alipio mentioned that really kind of set a light bulb was surrounding yourself with the right people, right? It's very easy to hear a lot of naysayers in your circle. So it's good to have positive circle, but also people that are kind of moving in the direction that you're moving in. And I've seen this trend of people kind of banding together with their talents and creating these websites where they all share what they do. How do you feel about that, Sumana? Is that something that you think is helpful, or is that something that also, again, pivots to the conversation to the competition more, and then you miss out?
Yeah, I mean, I think it also comes down to like, what do you want to do with your business model as well? Like I think I mentioned at the beginning of the live that there was this period of maybe 6 to 8 months, even before the company was incorporated, even before the website was done, where I thought what I wanted to do was this, right? And the pressure from the competition was, oh, you need to get into the coaching space. You have a gift. You need to do this one-on-one coaching. But I soon realized that I actually hated that. That was not my gift. I did not want to spend an hour doing one-on-one stuff with a client. I don't excel in it. If I'm not bringing the right energy to that space, then it's unfair to the client. It's unfair to me. So there was a few months spent trying to like think about that being the business model. So I mean, to answer your question, I think it depends on the individual. So the sooner you realize what your assets and skill sets are, and the sooner you bring someone like Alipio, someone who's a third party business mentor who can guide you, the better. Because I didn't have a business mentor for about 8 months, and I was kind of just like meandering, trying to figure out, because the world was telling me, my competitors were telling me, go into coaching, when I'm like, I don't want to do coaching. I want to do consulting. I want to do education. I want to do training. I want to do TED Talks. Like that was my stream. So having that competitive edge comes down to your own skill set, and then kind of leaning into your education, your competencies, your assets. So yeah, that's what I have to say to that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I think Alipio can also relate to that, being in the outside community, right? Like as a woman, as a minority, being on the outside, and then trying to be taken seriously, or trying to eliminate that bias that people have when they look at you. So Alipio, maybe you can tell your story. It sounded like it might be interesting about how you surrounded yourself with the wrong people, and maybe that could be a learning point for us.
Well, as Master Jedi Yoda said, failure is the best teacher. So this was back, when was this? Early 2000s, and this was actually came out of my last computer consulting gig. I designed the sales and marketing system for a small company. I helped them double their revenue in 3 years, essentially. And so I paired up with somebody from the retail industry, and she loved the system I developed. And so we thought, hey, let's start a company and get going. Essentially, the big company that you know as Salesforce, that's essentially the type of system that I developed back in the 2000s. And so I got 90% of my staffing right? Because as Humana knows, you have strengths, but you also have to know where your weaknesses are. And for Simona, she may not know this. I have dyscalculia, so I have no feel for numbers. Okay. I always have to have a finance person with me. So I got a really good finance person. I had a good lawyer. I had, the retail person as the industry expert. And I brought in this salesperson to lead the sales. But I didn't see when I started this company, I thought, okay, give people stock because they're putting in effort. What I didn't understand, you actually need to put them on a probationary period before you start giving out ownership. And essentially, the salesperson was good because he sold me and the rest of the team on how good he was when he was a fraud. So 6 months into this, when me and the team realized that we had been sold a bill of goods, I had to make the hard decision that, okay, because he already has ownership, it's going to be nasty trying to pry him out. So I just made the decision, I'm just going to shut it down. Because my experience, I had already had 3.5 years in software startups up in Seattle. And I know you can't fight more than one battle at a time. Number one, if you're trying to establish yourself as a company, that's one battle. But if you also have internal battles going on, that's just too much. Mm-hmm. So rather than do, because life is short, right? I just said, shut it down. I paid the $600 in corporate taxes because that's how the state of California is. Even though we didn't have any income or anything, just the fact that we established a corporation in California, you already owe corporate taxes. So I paid that and I ended it. And it was probably the best learning lesson I had, is just that when you surround yourself with people, understand you're human, you may not judge them correctly, and always have that long probationary period and have them prove to you they are worthy of the things that you are able to offer as an owner founder. So hopefully that can help people.
Yeah, I think I can relate to that for sure, because I'm very trustworthy, or trusting in others. Like if someone tells me they are away, I just assume they are, and so it's caught me a couple of times. So I think we'll pivot the conversation back to maybe some of the other barriers. Like I mentioned this, first impression bias, I guess. How are ways that you've been able to, overcome that first impression bias? And is it something even that you need to overcome? Has it been a positive for you? Simona, I guess I'll ask you first, and then we'll move to Alipio.
Yeah, I think first impression bias for me, 100%. People look at me and they just assume that I'm like, I don't know, in high school or something like that until I start speaking. If I put on a baseball hat or if I'm wearing my gym clothes, forget about it. Like I can probably walk into high school and no one would even ask me a question. So for me, it's always presenting myself in a way that if I'm going to an investor, if I'm going to an event that I'm going to go tonight, I'm not going to wear this leather jacket and pop in there. I'm probably going to dress the part to go there. And I think the overcoming component of it is just knowledge. Like I speak with confidence. You want to be able to share your story, share your background, share your mission and your vision, and and not, of course, not, don't have to be cocky about it. You don't have to be like, oh my God, look at me, I have like blah blah blah. No, but just kind of speak the truth, who you are, and the person that I am authentically is this. I am generally like this. So for me, it isn't like an act to go and speak to someone. It's just who I am. So I just say, be yourself, be your genuine self. And for me personally, this is just applicable to me. I will try to, dress the part, because I, of course, do a lot of fashion quite a bit, but I will dress the part to go to the places I want to go to. And I know there's people who may disagree with that statement, but that's one way for me to overcome and to stand out, because otherwise people are just not going to believe that I have a company, and I have, people that work for me, and that I have finances to look into, that I have lawyers that I in my network. No one believes me, so I don't want to have to spend the time and walk in with a sweatshirt, because they won't believe me, and it's going to be a harder, longer conversation. I don't have time for that. Time is money.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it's for women, I do think it's sometimes those small things, like how you dress, how you present yourself. I read someone's tip was to always say your first, last name, and title when you introduce yourself to someone, because that automatically sets a tone and lets them know what level you are, right? So I think, yeah, some of those smaller tips for women are very helpful in first impressions. Alipio, have you had do you think that first impression has been helpful to you? Are there things that you have done to kind of overcome a first impression, or what are your tips?
Well, you have to understand what are the stereotypes out there, and especially how they are can be a barrier to you, but also how they can be an advantage to you. All right. Because I grew up in Southern California, and obviously I'm much older than you ladies. But back then, the cultural stereotype, I think it's still actually out there, is Asian men are kind of looked at as passive, effeminate, right? And not masculine. However, and I'm Filipino, which is considered Asian. However, because I'm part Portuguese, I'm taller than the average Filipino. I'm 5'8". And as you can tell, I'm a big, husky guy. I actually look Hawaiian. So growing up in Southern California, I played into that image, right? I became a windsurfer. I wore the puka shells. So it was easy for me to play that stereotype to get accepted, right? So that's where I used an existing stereotype to my advantage. Now, you ladies, unfortunately, have, especially Samana, you have the long shadow cast by Elizabeth Holmes of the failed. Yeah, unfortunately, that is still out there. I hear a lot that women, when they go to, they always say, "You're not another Elizabeth Holmes," right? So again, but also you have to take a look at how did Elizabeth Holmes get this multi-billion-dollar company in which they even got patents from the U.S. Patent Office for technology that didn't even work. And it was because she played into the stereotype. She was white. She had these big anime large eyes. She had that deep voice. And she dressed like Steve Jobs. She knew exactly, she was a master salesperson that didn't have, unfortunately, any substance behind her. So again, what I'm talking about is that you have to understand, who you are, how, what stereotypes do you think are going to be applied to you? How can you take advantage of them, or how can you overcome them? And specifically, let people know that you are not the stereotype. You are an individual, and you have this that can make their lives more profitable, more less stressful. Can you bring value to their lives specifically? And that's how you can attract the right people and the right venture capital, is because people really, when it comes down to, is they want to be part of something larger than themselves. They want to feel that their talents and abilities, their individual contribution can mean something. And if you can credibly offer to that, then I've never had problems getting people to help me, because my first gesture is, how can I help you? Okay. Because people get to, especially, VCs, they get people banging on them all the time for money, money, money. It's sort of like, I'll say, hey guy, what are you looking for? What opportunity is going to get you excited? And because I am saving them time and get right to the point, they're going to make time for me. Tay already knows that important lesson. I worked at Paramount Pictures from a top executive. When you're dealing with high income executives and VCs, the most valuable thing they have is their time. And if you can show them you respect their time and respect their position, but also make them know that you're treating them as a human being, they will always make time for you and will listen to you with credibility.
Yes. Yeah, and I've,
Okay.
I've also seen that, like, even just networking on LinkedIn, where you don't actually get to see the person. All the deals that are happening currently in my business are happening on LinkedIn. So these
Mhm.
people, they don't know me. They've never met me in real life. They're not even in Canada, for God's sake. So they're all, just watching me on Zoom, but they are taking that trust, like Alipio said, and like me recognizing that 15 minutes of your time is just as valuable as 15 minutes of my time. We're not going over this time because I know how important as an entrepreneur we can spend hours of our life. Like I said, 6 months or 8 months, the first, beginning part of this journey. Thinking back now, it's like, oh my God, that's 6 months or 8 months. And now it's been a year. I'm like, oh my God, it's been a year. And we're constantly thinking about our business and like trying to find ways to monetize our time. So time is our biggest asset. So it's super important to make sure that we value each other's time, even if you're just walking into a investor's room to ask for money, or getting a sponsorship, or having a client meeting, whatever that may be. And me recognizing that these 15-minute, I used to give away these like 15-minute or 30, actually they started off as like 30 minutes, 30-minute free phone calls. I did that for maybe 3 months and people never showed up. And I would be
Mhm.
ready, waiting to have this conversation with you. But because it was free, they would not show up and they would cancel at the nick of time. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm not doing this anymore. There's no more free phone calls. You either come to it, pay me to come, or if it's something that we've negotiated, you just get one chance at it. And if there's one strike, I won't meet with you for another like maybe 2 months. I mean, that's just my rule.
Mhm. Well, something that I think about, um, in just communicating with people and setting up talks on LinkedIn and things, if you just are a no-show, what it tells me is I'm not top of mind, right? So I'm less important to you. And I really, after I feel that, I don't have an interest in trying to show my worth to you or try to, you know, it's like have a carrot to dangle to get you to meet with me. If you're not going to meet with me, I'm a valuable person too. I have things to do, so I can just move on with my life. Um, but I think that is definitely a tip I give to a lot of the sales people that I meet is don't chase, right? Like don't ever chase people because they genuinely will not respect you if you're chasing for the sale, right? Sumana, you keep saying you had this time to kind of discover what you wanted to do and where you ended up landing was different than where you started. So, what are your tips for other like women or other minorities that maybe are trying to start their own business? They don't know where to start. What would have helped you, I guess, along your path?
Along my discovery path, it's funny now that I'm looking back. So there's something that I've done consistently is like on my Google Doc. This was like right after grad school. I kind of knew there was a gut feeling. I'm like, you know what? I think I'm going to go into this business space. Like this was before the pandemic. We had no idea that 2020 was going to be the way that it is. And on my birthday in January in 2020, I was like, yes, this is the year I'm going to start my business. But I had started writing down the original sort of business model that I had in my mind as to what this was going to be. The words didn't quite make sense. I kind of
Mm,
had a vague idea that I wrote down in my Google Doc as to what I want to develop. And I'm not even kidding you. Now, when I go back and look at that document, a lot of it is literally what I am doing right now.
mhm,
Not the coaching thing that I wanted to do that people told me that I should do based on this playbook of what everybody else was doing. Not, the consulting thing as well. So I think the biggest tip is like to really spend a little bit of reflection time and rough draft your ideas, because your ideas are going to change every single day. And then a year later, 6 months later, go back and read that document. Go back and read your old resume, your old cover letter. I always tell people to like go back and read your letter of intent that you wrote for grad school, or to your medical school, or your law school or whatever, and read the intention behind that letter. I went back and read the letter that I submitted for grad school for my MPH, and my intention was to become a microbiologist so I can work in immunization and communicable diseases. That's not what happened at all, which is totally fine. But it made me realize that there is some value. And when universities and academic institutions make you do that exercise, there's a reason they make you do that exercise. Why do I need to write this letter? So write a letter to yourself. There's the tip right there. Write a letter to yourself as to what is it that you want to accomplish, and put it away, and maybe look at it a couple of months later and see if the contents of the letter matches where you are right now. And I think we already talked about it, having that third party mentor and getting that is, getting that in the recipe earlier. I think that would have helped me tremendously, because I was in a direction where I was working with, the tech people wanting to develop an app and looking into software and things like that. That was totally not it. And in the learning and development space, even right now, there's not a lot of brown people who are doing it. All the CEOs of the companies that I've researched in Alberta, in Toronto, in British Columbia, they're all female-led, but they're all white female-led companies. There's no one who looks like me who is doing learning and development or wellness learning and development or consulting. Why is that? I don't really know. Brown people don't want to do that because they feel like they have a really secure job in public health and being a medical doctor or whatever, and they don't want to let that go? Or are they really just scared of the biases of like, oh well, no one else has done it, so why should I? So maybe those are just some of my like preliminary thoughts.
I can relate to that. I think I create barriers for myself before I even start what I'm trying to do. Your mind plays tricks with you. And then if you're not seeing other women similar to yourself in those positions, then it makes you think, oh, well, maybe I'm not welcome, or maybe there's a reason, or, you start thinking, overthinking the situation. Alipio, did you have any kind of tips or tricks for people that are starting out?
Yeah, well, I actually have a proven method that I've been doing since I was 17. Kay already kind of knows it. Essentially, it goes back to a book I read when I was 17, and there's a quote that I've actually lived my life by, and it's this: argue for your limitations and they're yours. And again, let me repeat that: argue for your limitations and they're yours. And how I've come to interpret that is how you view yourself can be a barrier to where you want to go. So how do you overcome that? Well, I learned early on, focus on a concrete objective. And so I'll go through this real story real quick on when I first tried this. I was rendered temporarily homeless my junior year at UCLA because financial aid screwed me over. They only gave me 2/3. And even though I appealed successfully, they said, well, moral victory, you won, but the money's already been dispersed, so see you next quarter. So I ended up borrowing my mom's car, and at first I thought I was going to have to live out of this car. But then I said, no, I'm going to set the objective. I'm not going to spend a single night in this car. Now, my self-image at the time, I was very introverted. I was a bookworm, but that wasn't going to serve me. So in order to achieve my objective, I pushed myself to ask my fellow classmates, hey, I'm temporarily homeless. Can I stay at your place? So I stepped way outside of who I thought I was. But by focusing on my goal, I consistently did that. And not once did I sleep in that car during the entire academic quarter during finals week. And because of that, that changed my self-image and made me realize that I am the number one person who can stop myself because of who I think I am, which determines what I think I'm capable of, what I'm not capable of, who I can speak to, who I can't speak to. So again, that's why it's really important to set a concrete objective, right? As I said, my goal at that time was I'm not going to spend one night sleeping in this car. And the tactics and the methods and the opportunities came from that mindset by focusing on that. And my self-image expanded because I had actual track record of success. So that's my advice to anybody that wants to become an entrepreneur is, number one, first of all, ask yourself, is this really something you want to do? As Sumana knows, it's a lot of sacrifice. Okay, you're going to have to give up those 2-week vacations. You're going to have to give up the weekends. You're going to be at parties where everybody's partying around you, and you're too focused on your business. It's like you might as well not be there. Okay, so Sumana knows.
I mean, that's true. That's so true.
So ask yourself, is this something that, you just because you're bored or you really don't want to take the effort in advancing your career? It is probably the most important question because there's a reason there's a large number of failures for startups. And I believe a large part of it, it's not suited for a lot of people. It really isn't. So ask that question and be honest. Get all your close friends to give you positive feedback, not the ones that are going to try to keep you in that little box where they know they make that validate their self-existence.
Mhm.
Instead, the ones that you cheer their successes, they cheer your successes, right?
Mm.
Those are the type of people that you want to surround yourself. And ask them, do you think I'm ready? Maybe it's not the right time for you. Maybe you need to continue skills. I can tell you, I spent 8.5 years in corporate IT before I had an inkling I was going to go up to Seattle blindly to break in the software engineering industry. I had no way. I had no idea how I was going to do it. If you told me a year later that I was going to lead this project, it was going to be written up by Microsoft, I would have laughed in your face. But again, it comes down to, are you ready? Do you have the skills to do this? Because it's a lot of sacrifice. I could tell you it's worth it. But again, it took me 8.5 years to get to that point. Back
Mhm.
to you, Taya.
Well, thank you, Alipio. I think you and Sumana have that in common because it took Sumana 10 years in the public health sector. It took you 8.5 years before you started. And I think that says a lot about just work experience and life experience, right? You needed that experience to help guide you on your path towards, entrepreneurship. So I think that's probably more common than you think, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was like, as you were talking, Alipio, I was sort of even thinking back to, back when I started thinking about, hey, I want to do this. You don't tell a lot of people. You keep it kind of quiet because you're a little bit worried. Hey, what are people going to think? So there was a very small group of people that kind of knew this idea that, hey, Sumana's going to quit her job and, start her own thing. Whatever that thing is, it didn't have a name, it didn't have a word. It was just like this thing that I was wanting to do. But that inner circle, the first, I think my very first exercise with this inner circle was asking my people, hey, what do you think my strengths are? Like, I just sent them a text message and be like, hey, so tell me 5 words that you would describe, Sumana, like what comes to your mind? And the words were not just to like make me feel good words. They were like genuine, words that helped me realize like what are my really important core strengths and how can I utilize that and use that as a chip to play when I go into business, because I know nothing about business. I didn't go to grad school. I mean, to MBA to learn business. There was a lot I didn't know. And I still remember the day when I actually, out of panic, I think out of pure panic, because I didn't know the concepts of business, that I applied to the MBA program at UBC. I had just finished grad school. Are you crazy? I'm going to go back and do another graduate program? But my family thought, hey, that's a really good idea. You should go back and do your MBA. This is going to set you up for success. Once you have your MBA, you're going to be a great business person. So I did. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do all the training. I'm going to do the GRE. I'm going to, do the application. I'm going to apply to grad school to do the MBA. And I did. And that was the very first time that I had to record a video on my phone to submit, because the part of the application process was not just a letter of intent, it was also a video of a question that they ask every cohort. They ask you a question, a hypothetical question, and you have to give them a 5-minute video presentation about what that would look like.
Mhm.
Let me tell you, I'm one of these days I'm going to post that video. It was a hot mess. I had no idea how to be in front of a camera. I had no idea how to answer the question. I was so nervous because I didn't know what to do. But that exercise was my first experience to making videos. And I'm like, okay, I think I kind of enjoyed that. Let me see what else I could do with videos.
And then TikTok. So when was that in, in alliance with your TikTok? Did that it was how did that like help you move forward into that?
And what I actually so that what I did. So this is my okay. Y'all are gonna hear the whole story. This is what I did. So the MBA video went out. It was a hot mess, but I submitted it anyways. halfway through the application process, I'm like, this is not my cup of tea. I can't do it. And then the pandemic started. So I'm like, well, do I go to school or do I support public health? I think I'm in it now. I need to do this. So anyways, and then I started making YouTube videos. So I was making tons of videos on YouTube, like full production. I had a really expensive camera that my brother gave me, and I was making weekly videos, which were about 30 minutes long, where I would just, stand in front of a camera like this, and I would just speak about wellness in kind of a general perspective. Nothing to do with burnout, nothing to do with evidence. I think I was talking about yoga, breath work, like just the basic stuff that people already know. But that took a lot of effort to be like, how do I make YouTube videos? And I gained a couple of subscribers. It was really, really good. And then I realized this is not it. This is not hitting, it's not filling my cup, because this production component of it is taking me 3 days. Video making is taking me a whole day. This is 5 days. This is too much work now. I don't want to do it. So then we pivoted kind of randomly through my business mentor. He just said, hey, I think you should make TikToks. And I'm like, you know what? I'll do it. And I just randomly started doing it out of the blue. Even if you go back and look at my old videos on TikTok, they're so cringy. Oh my goodness, they were so bad. They're not good. But here we are.
Yeah, I myself am not that comfortable on camera. It takes a lot to get me to this point, and I don't think I'm that comfortable still on camera. I kind of freeze a bit. And you're so natural.
You're doing a
You're
good job.
doing
You're doing a
really
good job.
awesome, Simona. Thanks.
But no, I think here's the conclusion for that story is the learning piece, right? How we're not experts. I wasn't an expert at making videos. It took me a really long time to learn that craft. I think I'm still learning that craft. So I think as entrepreneurs, as early startups, don't beat yourself up that you don't know the skill, because I come from a laboratory. I come from public health and policy and guidelines and immunization and data, and to become this creative person who's making TikToks and using greens. I don't know that. So just be gentle with yourself and give yourself the permission to become whatever version of yourself you're going to become. You're not there yet. I don't think I'm there yet either. So we're good.
I love that. I love that advice, Simona. And um, I had a mentor as well. So I I did a master's in psychology and a master's in MBA masters. And then my real focus is occupational psychology. So, like how organizations work. And I have a mentor, and she gave me the same exercise, 5 character traits from a family member, 5 from someone that you work with, and 5 from like your social circle. And then she said, look at where there's consistency, right? Like, is there a word that most people describe you as? And so that kind of exercise was really mind opening to me of how I present myself and what skills I guess that I have that I maybe take for granted, which is another reason why I always recommend having someone else write your resume for you, because you take for granted everything you've done. And to you, it's just second nature. It's like, I've done that. Or it may be something you think is so small. That was such a small task. It's not really even important enough to say, but it is important, right? It's very important. And it could be a key to fitting you into a certain position or a certain area. So I think having that third person perspective is helpful. Not that it defines you, right? Like you still have to be yourself and define yourself, but it is helpful when you're looking at the whole like mapping, I guess, of your career.
So what was the word?
The word, I think it was creative is what everyone said about me. So
there you go. Let's go. I love it. I love it. I love it.
But yeah, it was funny because I asked my oldest daughter for her 5 words, and I can't remember, one of them was like overbearing or something. I was like, no, that's not like what I'm asking for. It's like, maybe to you, yes, because you're my daughter, you think that, but not like, I hope that doesn't define me to other people.
What about you, Alipia? What was your word? Did you have a word that your friends and family and like social circle said, like told and described you as?
Pretty much nerd. you know. But again, I've learned to use that as an advantage. Um, just real quick, Simona, because Tay already knows my background. Um, August 2019, I just decided I was going to take control of my health. I went and did the research, paired up with an endocrinologist, School of Medicine, USC, and I cured myself. And I believe in objective data because people can't argue against accomplishments based on objective data. And Tay's already seen this. As I said, I'm a history major out of UCLA with background in software. And here I'm in Clubhouse and MedTech Lobby. I don't know if you've ever been in there,
Mm-hmm.
but I have accomplished so much with the fasting protocol I've developed. I have a professor of vascular biology. He's a CEO of a major corporation that's looking to eliminate preeclampsia from the world. And he was asking me for fasting advice because I focus on objective data and accomplishments. So, but that's one of the benefits of being a nerd. I really get in the details. I look at the studies out of NIH, peer review stuff. I bounce it off the doctors I work with at the School of Medicine. I now have two I've recruited, plus a person with the University of Washington Department of Microbiology, and another person who does research for the stem cell therapy companies. And again, I'm just a simple ex-history major that knows how to ask questions. So again, it really comes down to, I'm sorry, what was the topic again? I got lost.
I was asking you to describe the word and you said nerd, and then now we're hearing
Yeah.
this wonderful story. I love
Oh,
it.
yeah. Well, primarily also from my experience, I'm a person that gets things done.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
some of the ways I've done to get things done are a little bit unorthodox. And so, real quick, I came up with this way of extending a deadline on a $500,000 software project for a startup company. And my team was shocked, but they agreed it made sense. And when I went to tell the VP of engineering, he got this horrified look on his face, turned pasty white, and he says, I see nothing, I hear nothing, I know nothing. Just tell me when it's done. So that just tells you my personality. I'm very creative in that way. And I think it's being a nerd because I just look at what needs to get done and I will come up with the craziest ways to get it done. And I've been pretty successful that way. So
Love it. Love
that's
it.
what I bring to the table.
Love it.
Well, I think, another good point that you brought up, Sumana, is this idea of having a mentor and someone that can help guide you and give you some tips and tricks. Like, my mentor gave me the same exercise as your mentor. So I think that's something that a lot of people maybe use and know about that trick. Um, are there any tips for how to find someone that is in your field, I guess, or does it even matter?
No, the person that is like my unofficial business mentor is like literally not even in healthcare. He's from finance. He's like a complete, like, which is, you know what? That's the tip right there. Find someone who's not in your field, maybe, because
Mm.
that other dimension that he brings, the other perspective that he brings, actually helps me think better, because he will question me in a way where I'm like, oh, I didn't think like
Mhm.
that. So maybe, if you're looking for a mentor, I found him right on LinkedIn, just super kind of like randomly. He connected with me, and then we just developed a really solid friendship where I was like, you know what, I think this is going to work. But finding a mentor that's actually not in healthcare, I think, has helped me quite a bit, because this person reads a lot, knows more about like the marketing side of things, knows a lot about money. And actually, Alipio, you mentioned that you need to make sacrifices. Oh my goodness, I think I wrote a post about it a couple of weeks ago, the number of sacrifices I've had to make, especially like not buying clothes and like, bare minimum, like minimalistic, and not getting excited about, oh, that's like, I used to spend so much money on clothes, and I don't at all. I haven't for almost 3 years, which is like, what is happening? But I've had to like tell my brain that I'm okay with my closet right now, but because the bigger mission, the bigger vision, the bigger purpose that is becoming It doesn't need me to, wear the latest kind of crop top that's out in the market. So those sacrifices had to be made. So, and with that money that I saved, let me power up my internet. Let me get more data for my phone. Let me get some software that will help me do more video editing. So really channeling those resources towards the business versus towards, myself. In the beginning, I would just be like, whatever, I need another pair of shoes now because I just do, or another MAC lipstick because why not, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a business mentor that you can start to find is maybe think, you had mentioned Alipio, like thinking back on what are your weaknesses. My weaknesses is that I'm not that creative to begin with, and my weaknesses are like I don't think practically sometimes. So having someone to fill that void through your weaknesses, you've done your strength and weakness analysis. Find out your weaknesses and then maybe find a mentor that can help fulfill that, because then boom, the power, whoa, magic. You're going to have like a solid foundation, to help succeed in your business.
I think that's great. I think it's really important to know that even though you have a weakness or you're not that great at something, if you do a SWOT analysis on yourself and you have these negative traits, but that's fine because you can have a team. That's what a team is built for. It's not built for everyone on the team to be exactly the same. You have to fill in each other's gaps. That's the whole point of having a team, right? It's like that you work together. And so I think sometimes people can psych themselves up to thinking, oh, I'm not worthy because I don't have this skill set or I can't do this. Well, th- that's okay because maybe someone else on the team does that really well and then you can help them with something they don't do really well, right? It's all about balance.
Mm.
Yes, Alipio?
Well, I have a specific way that I can share with people. For example, as I said, I I just upgraded my technology, just got a new laptop. And so having my old laptop is still really good. It's not even a year old. So I've made friends with a person who has extensive grant writing experience. And so what I've done is that I've invested in her, in that I sent her my old laptop. She lost her laptop about a year ago and she's been operating off an iPhone. And so I gave her my laptop. I bought all the extended warranties, expanded my Microsoft Office from personal to family so she can be added. In other words, to make her official part of the team by investing in her. And so she's going to be handling going through all these research grants that are being given out by the federal government every year. She's got the experience, she's got the track record and the credibility, which I don't. So to me, this is a worthwhile investment of my limited business resources to generate another source of income. So that's just an example. Again, when you are looking at building your team, you have to think outside of the box. Like example, this is how I turned a used laptop into another member of my team to look for income opportunities in an area I don't have much expertise in. So again, you have a lot to offer. Maybe you can do a swap. Like Sumana, you have experience in public health. Maybe you can swap that where someone, again, who is a little bit more creative, like in TikTok or something. Another thing that I think a lot of people don't understand, I think a bunch of young entrepreneurs, first of all, nothing new has been developed under the sun. It's always a rehash of what's already out there. Yeah. And you mind me to spend a few minutes because this is a specific example, Taya. Okay. When I first got into Clubhouse and I was talking to this venture capitalist, he's actually an angel investor out of New York. And we were talking, he said that, look, I would not invest in your company because you've developed this protocol and your limitation is you have to duplicate you. In other words, you have to duplicate coaches. So that's already a limitation right there. So that's why I would not invest in you. However, there's a company out there, you may have heard of it, called Noom. Right? Yes. You've seen the advertisements. Well, it was started by a couple software engineers back in 2008. One of them was who worked for Google. So they designed this diet exercise app. And the primary reason it's different, it's based on cognitive psychology. And what they've done is they figured out a way to provide virtual coaching. Because so they didn't come out with their app until 2015. So they spent all this time developing it based on doctors and experts. And now This company is now on its ninth round of venture capital. They have a staff of 3,000, of which 2,800 are virtual coaches. And their app has been now downloaded 55 million times. So they have cracked the code. So it's the reason that I've signed up with them. But also, and Taya knows this, always understand what you see as the visible thing they put out about what their success is may not be the true reason. Okay. And I learned this from studying Microsoft. What people don't understand, Microsoft, yes, is innovative, but any tech company is innovative. Their key differentiator was, people don't recognize this, Bill Gates' father was a top lawyer in Seattle. And if you look at how they were able to maintain their business advantage, look at their contracts. That's how they got to where they were. It was the innovation plus the contracts they designed. And it's the same thing with Noom. Noom, a lot of people don't know this. They went to the CDC approved National Diabetes Prevention Program. They submitted a variation of that program to CDC, got it approved. And now, as part of that, they can say that their application is the only CDC approved app for diabetes prevention.
Wow. Yeah.
So I signed up with Noom. I'm actually taking the National Diabetes Prevention Program myself, and I'm going to be submitting my own variation to the CDC, including my fasting protocol. So again, if you understand what you are trying to aim for, try to find a company that's already that you can use as a template. As we say, mentors come in all sizes and shapes. It could be a company that's already out there that you can learn from. So hopefully that helped people.
Yeah, I think that's a really good tip. And I always say to not look at age either, because there's someone on LinkedIn called Kenneth Toe, and he works in gaming. He's younger than me, but I do consider him a mentor because he has taught me a lot about marketing and a lot about business that I had no idea. I would never have known. So, look up, look down in age, like it doesn't matter. It's what the person brings, right? Like what can you learn from them and what can they learn from you? It's a two-way street. So that would be my advice to everyone, is just to consider what the gain is, and what you can also give. Don't just take from people.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, because it doing that inventory recently of like, who do I have this two-way relationship with? Because if I'm in a relationship with someone where I just take, then there's not going to be a respect from my side, right, for that person. But if I'm in a relationship also where they're just like taking from me and I'm giving, then I'm exhausted, right? So you have to have the two-way street for it to be good on both sides and have that flow of energy. I'm really kind of trying to be mindful of the energy flow in my life, you know.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta keep what serves you and let go what is not serving you. I think I've also learned that, which is another reason why I do an audit like of all of my social media accounts very regularly to see like who is actually like dragging down my account. Do I need all these bots? And I've done that a few times now where you're like, oh, I have all these followers, but then like, 10%, 5% of those are just bots. And you're like, let's get rid of these. I don't need the numbers. I need actual people that want to be part of the community. I've done that with the Wellness Summit as well. I sent out an email a couple days ago and I said, hey, if you don't want to be part of the community, let me know. We don't want anyone to be here if you don't want to be here. We want to serve you, but we want to make sure that we are the right people serving you. And if we're not serving you, you could just hit that no button and we will leave you alone. So I think that audit, a regular audit, is very important.
I love that. I love that. And it's something that I think Clubhouse does that kind of plays with your mind a bit, is that you get a large audience, right? But who in that audience is a valuable contributor? Not very many. It's a handful. So I've actually found it's more valuable speaking on this platform on LinkedIn, because I get interaction from people that are in my field or professionals. So it's a much higher quality of interaction than on Clubhouse. So yeah, it's interesting. I do want to respect your time, so we are at the hour. So if there's anything you wanted to go around, maybe share one last thought, and then we will close down. Sumana, did you have one quick thought for everyone?
Let's see here. Don't get hung up on the coulda, shoulda, woulda. You're gonna do a lot of that. Okay, whatever happened in the past happened in the past. Learn from your mistakes. Do an analysis. Give yourself, like, okay, in every week or every month, you have your lessons learned time. Develop that schedule in. Do your lessons learned and move on. Because the more you sit back and think about I coulda, shoulda, would have done that, you're never gonna move forward. So that's my tip. last thought.
Love that. Love that, Simona. And Alipio, one last tip for our viewers.
Okay, something that's easy to keep in mind. As you know, I like quotes. They inspire me, and they're also easy to remember. And one of the North Stars I've always followed is I watched an interview with Oprah Winfrey, and someone asked her what was the key to her success. And the key was every day she focused on trying to have her day where she just did what she loved to do.
Mm-hmm.
And she knew she reached the mountain was when her entire day was just doing stuff she loved to do. And delegate everything else.
I love that.
Let's do a part 2 of this, because I think there's more to talk about and hash out, because I have like a list of things more. Let's do another part 2, shall we?
Yeah, we totally can. Next week I'm off because we'll have, in the US, we have a Memorial Day weekend. So
that's for us this week, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah, well, ours is next week, so I won't be here on Friday. But yeah, the next month I'll post our topics, so that a part 2 of this would be great. Thank you both. It was a lot of fun talking. So I'm going to end the podcast now. Bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.